Great, thank you, and good morning, everyone. So again, we're here today to talk about coolOrange PowerJobs. This is actually the first in a four-part series about coolOrange software and its capabilities. Today, we're talking about PowerJobs for Consumable File Generation. Next week, next Wednesday, we'll be talking about how PowerJobs could be used for communication with ERP, MRP, PLM systems. The week after that, on Wednesday, May 1st, we'll be talking about enhancing life cycles with the coolOrange Power Events software. We'll also be talking about our Hagerman's proprietary lifecycle connection software. They kind of go together in that topic set. And we'll be closing up the series on Wednesday, May 8th with ensuring data integrity with Power Events. Again, Power Events is another piece of coolOrange software. So each of these webcasts, they're a little shorter than my typical webcast. They'll be 20, 30 minutes or so. And the basic idea is to give you a sense of capabilities of what these products can do. We recently entered into a partnership with coolOrange to start, selling their software. And I've been a fan of their stuff for a long time. I'm really excited that we get to start representing it and bring it to our customers because they provide a whole lot of capability for not much investment. So today specifically, we're going to be talking about, again, PowerJobs for Consumable File Generation. We're going to start with just a description of who coolOrange is as a company, just so you're familiar with them. We'll move into PowerJobs and what it is and how does it work. And then we'll get into some specific examples of things you can do with PowerJobs to help your non-CAD users or consumers, as I typically call them, people that consume your CAD data, how you can make their lives easier and your life easier. And as well as, making sure that data gets to the right people at the right time and that they're aware of what they're looking at, right? That's one of the big challenges in any organization. And I think Vault itself has some, specific hurdles to jump when you're trying to get data from Vault that you've created in Inventor, AutoCAD, et cetera, to people that don't use CAD but need to act on that information, right? So that's what today's presentation is all about. So just starting real quick with coolOrange, so you know who you'd be working with, or you'd be working with us, but the software you'd be buying. coolOrange, they were founded in 2009 by former Autodesk employees. They've got more than 15 years of experience in data management software development. They have done projects worldwide with their products, over 600 projects in 19 countries. So you may not have heard of them yet. You're hearing about them today if you haven't, but they're only getting more common and more popular. Their products just are really fantastic. Now, in terms of the products that they do provide, they fall into three buckets of behavior, I would say. The first one is loading data into Vault, and this is all Vault related, right? This is what we're talking about, is how Vault, this is software that works with Vault. So, a challenge that a lot of people have is loading data into Vault, be it importing data from disk, from a competitive system like maybe EPDM, Windchill, et cetera, maybe a legacy system like Teamwork, or so like an older document management system that's no longer supported you need to move from. Or even merging vaults together. We're seeing a lot more of that these days where, through acquisition, you've got a couple of different groups now that have been using Vault for years, and you want to unify engineering processes and get everybody on the same page, get that data into Vault, a single Vault. coolOrange has some products to help with that leverage the Autodesk provided data transfer utility to make it a little easier to use that very cryptic utility to get where you need to go. The second bucket would be sort of enhance type products that enhance Vault workflows, your processes, process automation, PowerJobs and Power Events would fall into that category. And then the last one would be connecting Vault to other systems, integration with ERP, Fusion Lifecycle maybe, or Vault to like any other cloud system or any other business system, right? Now, this series is really going to be focusing on the enhance part of their product line. again, PowerJobs and Power Events. And we decided to start here because most people are going to find the most benefit, I think, from these products, because they're very low cost to implement considering what they do for you, high return on investment, and they provide, the type of automation that not only saves you time but can save you a ton of money and catch mistakes or prevent mistakes. Right. So getting into PowerJobs, if you've not heard of it before, it builds upon the out-of-the-box job processor that comes with Vault Workgroup and Vault Professional. So that's one thing that you got to keep in mind, is this does not work with Vault Basic, right? It requires Vault Workgroup or Vault Professional. It leverages the existing job processor. And if you've ever used the job processor, you'll see that this looks somewhat familiar, right? This bit in the middle looks familiar, but there's a little bit down here below that's got information about the running job, and it's called coolOrange PowerJobs. But there are just a host of things you can do, because the whole idea of it is to easily create your own custom jobs to run with the job processor. Now, you can do that if you'd like with the out-of-the-box Vault, but it is not trivial. I've done it before in the past. You got to write, like a job in .NET to handle every little detail, communicating with the Vault. It's something that ultimately gets compiled, and so it can be harder to change and distribute. And there's just a lot that you have to do, to get a custom job working without something like PowerJobs. We'll get into a second why PowerJobs is so useful, but just some examples of things you can do in general. Creating custom PDFs, that's one that people have wanted to do for years with Vault. Converting to other formats, so not just a PDF, but if you need to save out a step file of a model, for example, or a DXF of a flat pattern, or converting to DWG from like an inventor drawing. Uploading data to ERP, we'll be covering that next week. Email notification for these things. I don't know if you use the job processor, if you've ever fired up the job queue at some point and seen a whole bunch of error jobs and not realized none of these jobs had been running. Your custom jobs can incorporate email, a notification, and even things like smart plotting, where maybe when you release a drawing in the Vault, depending on the category that it's in or certain properties, maybe you need a hard copy to automatically appear at some printer out in the shop. You could do that too with PowerJobs. Just about anything you can think of that you'd want to do either on demand or more commonly as a result of a file or item lifecycle state change in the Vault. If you want some automation to happen, if it can be done at all, PowerJobs can probably get you there. So just quickly, the requirements for PowerJobs, so like if this is something you're interested in, what you'd have to get it deployed. It leverages the job processor, so the same fundamental requirements from a system standpoint as the Vault client, and you would also need either a Vault Workgroup or a Vault Professional license. Now, typically would put this on some dedicated computer in your environment running the Vault client, and it would need to meet the system requirements for that, which are pretty minimal, frankly, for just the Vault client. You would need a license of the PowerJobs software, and what's great about that is it's a job server, right? So you don't have to deploy software to every one of your Vault workstations. You could have a single job server computer or job processor computer in your environment, maybe more than one if you've got a pretty heavy load, that maybe that one computer just can't get through all of the jobs. But, you're talking, in most cases, one, maybe a couple, and you only need a license for each one of those, right? So from a license standpoint, it's really minimal. And then the only other thing is you may need a CAD license on that job processor computer, depending on what you're doing. Now, if you're just making PDFs and DWFs, as of the 2018 release, update 2 for Vault, you don't necessarily need Inventor to be installed on the computer. For AutoCAD stuff, you could always use TrueView. For Inventor, prior to 2018.2, you'd have to have Inventor installed on the job processor, because only Inventor could update the drawings or CAD models prior to making that PDF or DWF. But with 2018.2, they introduced something called the Inventor server component for the Vault client that can allow PDF and DWF, and I think maybe even like step conversions without needing a license of Inventor, which is great for the job processor. But I say you may still need one, because in some cases, and I think this may be due to Inventor server just being a new component, the PDF or DWF output doesn't look perfect. It seems to be like on a case-by-case basis, so you can't actually say if you do X, it won't work. But you may still need a license of Inventor on your job processor if you're handling Inventor documents and the PDFs or DWFs don't come out looking the way you want. Or if there's more advanced, functionality that you're trying to do, because you're by no means limited to just making PDFs or DWFs out of Inventor. That's something I want to, highlight. PowerJobs is not just, okay, a slightly fancier way to make a PDF. That's where we're starting with this series, because that's the most common need for people that we've seen. But really, there's just all sorts of really interesting things you can do with PowerJobs. But how, right? How does that work? How does PowerJobs work? How do you accomplish that? And what it comes down to is you write custom jobs via PowerShell. Now, if you're not familiar with PowerShell, PowerShell is a scripting language that was built on the .NET framework. If you have Windows 10, for sure, you have access to PowerShell. It can reference .NET assemblies, which makes it extremely powerful. Not just the .NET framework, but also any .NET library. So like the Inventor, AutoCAD, Interops, the Vault assemblies. So you get complete access to the Inventor, AutoCAD, Vault API if you need it, and can do just about anything with that makes sense to do in a PowerShell script with those APIs. But one of the most interesting things about PowerJobs is that it includes a component called PowerVault. Now, PowerVault is something maintained by coolOrange. It's a PowerShell extension, and it enables interacting with the Vault through PowerShell commandlets. Now, commandlets are PowerShell-specific commands that often abstract away a lot of more complex, maybe even .NET behavior or API interaction. In this case, abstracting away a lot of complex Vault API behavior to perform vital tasks. And one of the most amazing things about PowerVault is PowerVault itself is free. You could go to coolOrange's website right now and download it and use it in PowerShell. Now, PowerJobs is still useful because it allows you to, schedule jobs on demand from Vault's client interaction and even run jobs on demand from the client. But you could, in theory, if there was something you wanted to do periodically to your Vault, you could create a script in PowerShell using PowerVault to make it a little easier to do for yourself, and then schedule that as a task in Windows to run periodically. So, but PowerVault makes because I've tried to do this before with the API, and it's possible for sure, but you can do in one line with a PowerVault commandlet that would take you several lines of code and complexity, with interacting with .NET. So again, just to recap, PowerJobs is an enhancement for the default job processor. It allows you to create custom jobs via PowerShell scripts. It provides simplified access to the Vault API and interacting with Vault, communicating with Vault. And it's really designed to work in conjunction with the file life cycles or item life cycles in Vault to automate processes. And so I thought to wrap up our first presentation here, we'd get into some different scenarios for consumable file generation, because everybody has different needs, right? And so those scenarios are, just if you just need a PDF put in the Vault for whatever reason, I just want a PDF in Vault, we can do that for sure. If you need maybe more complex behavior out of your PDF, if you need not just a PDF of a drawing, but maybe you want to make a drawing package, and maybe if you want to watermark PDFs. Those are 4 really common needs that we've seen, and out of the box, Vault now just barely meets the first one, right? This first scenario. So let's take a look at this, and we'll see kind of how it behaves in Vault. We're not really going to get into the specifics of the scripting or the scripting language today. If you've got any questions about that, you can always contact your Hagerman account manager, and we can set up a call to discuss, what PowerJobs can do for you and more information. We also provide services for creating custom jobs based on your requirements, and even some, if you want some enablement for maintaining and creating your own jobs, we can help you with that too. But the first scenario here, creating a basic PDF. Right? Maybe you've got no special requirements. There's an out-of-the-box sample PDF job, right? So what I've done here is I've created, 4 sample documents, each of them in their own different life cycles. And the idea is it uses the job server. Right now I have no jobs in my queue. But when I make a transition, in this case, if I transition this PDF from work in progress, or this drawing, I should say, from work in progress to released, that's going to put a custom job on the queue, right? We're going to see we've got a job now that needs to be done. It's my sample create PDF job. And it's straightforward to specify when these jobs need to run. When you're configuring your lifecycle behavior across any transition. So for example, from work in progress to release, there's a little tab for custom job types. And you can say when this transaction happens, run this sample job, this custom job. So it's very easy to tell Vault to throw a job on the stack when something happens. And then what's going to happen at that point is the PowerJobs job processor, which I have running over here, sitting idle. It checks every so often for new jobs to do. It's going to pick up that job and run it. So this is just what the out-of-the-box job processor would do, right? I'm going to pause and resume this so that it checks for jobs immediately. And it's going to pick up the job. In this case, it found Inventor on the system. It's going to launch Inventor. It opened up the drawing, it made a PDF, and it put it back into the Vault. So now we should see our job is gone, and we refresh our view. Pretty simple, right? So here's a PDF of that drawing. Vault can preview PDFs, we can take a look at it, but it also did attach that PDF to the CAD document. So we can see that here as well, right? So that was part of the job. And that is the completely out-of-the-box PDF behavior in PowerJobs. So pretty similar to what the default PDF job in Vault can do, like the out-of-the-box one. The difference here is I can make this PDF happen anytime across any transition, whereas out-of-the-box, it can only happen when it goes into released. And it also, it can be kind of difficult, frankly, to configure the out-of-the-box PDF job. You can configure it a little bit in the Vault options and settings, but the first time I went to make PDFs with the out-of-the-box job, it took me maybe 10 minutes or so to get it working the way I wanted to. you could have PowerJobs set up and running that sample PDF job in less time than that. So that's the absolute basic, right? But most people have slightly different needs, maybe more need than that. So a second scenario might be, okay, we need a PDF. It's not just a PDF in the Vault. We have a bunch of people that don't use Vault. They don't like Vault. They kind of refuse to use it maybe. We just want to make sure that a PDF gets put outside the Vault somewhere for them to look at and use. Now, a lot of people do that today. And they get by with it. I'll say they get by with it because if you're not automating that process, you're relying on someone to, once they're done with the drawing, create that PDF and put it somewhere, right? A lot of people use a manual process like that. They finish their drawing, maybe they check it into Vault, they make a PDF and they copy it to the network location where that PDF should go. What if you forget? I've heard Julia's on with us answering questions today, and she's got a story. She talks about like a literal boat anchor of a company who they do really complicated, expensive castings. An engineer, end of the day on a Friday, forgot to make an updated PDF and put it out. They sent a PDF out for quote and built a casting against something out of date, and they could not salvage it. So they paid about $100,000, I think it was, for this casting that they couldn't use, all because an engineer got busy, got distracted, and forgot to put the PDF out on the network. And it's literally now the boat anchor for the company owner's boat. And if they had PowerJobs, there's no need to remember, right? So here's an example, but maybe it's not just a PDF going out on the network. Maybe you also need to send a step out along with that PDF for your third-party machine shop or whatever, outside resources to machine against, whatever. So in this case, we could have a custom job that not only makes a PDF and puts it back into the Vault, but also puts a PDF into a network location and a step file as well. So here I've got a drawing. It uses this part file. It's the same basic drawing here using the same model. But ideally, what we need to happen is when we release, and we'll go ahead and get this back into a WIP state real quick. When I release this drawing, I need a PDF to go out to the network, and I want a step file of the related part to go out with it. Now, the part's already released. I'm not touching the part in Vault at all. I just maybe updated the drawing, and I need to make sure that the step file gets updated as well. When I change to released, another custom job goes on the stack, right? And as far as the user is concerned, once they hit release, they don't have to worry about it. Now, the job processor, when we pick up that job, it's going to find that job, it's going to open up the drawing, it's going to make a PDF of the drawing, but then it's also going to query the Vault for any related model file on that drawing. It's going to make a step file of the related model and throw that out into our output folder as well. And so you see that was Rev J. And if we look at our output folder here, we can see here's Rev J. It just got created. So here's the PDF of the drawing. And it created a step file. And it appended the revision information for that. So if we have, if we're keeping track of revisions, of course, and we want to make sure that the person consuming this document knows exactly what they're looking at, we can incorporate the Rev letter into the file name. And again, this is PowerJobs. We have access to the file record. We have access to all of its properties through the very useful commandlets and PowerShell objects. And so if there's other property information we want to associate with this file name, we could do that, right? So if you want the format to be a little bit different, it's literally just a matter of changing a little string in the PowerShell script. And you don't have to recompile if it was a custom job and distribute it to the job processors again. You just tweak the script and you're off and going, right? So that's the second, scenario in terms of consumable file generation. And that, again, itself is pretty straightforward. It's still leveraging off of one of the existing jobs, just tweaking it just a little bit, getting that PDF out to a certain location and changing its name, and then also using another commandlet to export that model file as a step file as well. So a third scenario, and this was a need from one of our customers, expressed this need, because they make the product that they make, it's usually essentially a configuration of several different subcomponents, but they ultimately need to make a print pack of a bunch of existing drawings that all sort of are tied together in this one part number, right? So it's like a configurable product. And so the workflow there that I came up with for them was they could create a folder that matched their part number, and then rather than copying a bunch of documents or like putting all of their files in there, they could just copy links to those files. So like this file is somewhere off in the vault, this file is somewhere else in the vault. These are all the individual like top level sub-assemblies that are going together to build this specific part number. And they're just pasted links into this folder, right? And then when I go and actually release my top level assembly drawing here, there's a custom job that's going to run, and it's going to look in the vault for a folder that matches the part number of my top level assembly, and any linked drawings in that folder, it's going to either grab an existing PDF or make a new PDF of it if it doesn't already exist, and it's going to put all of those PDFs together into a single PDF document, multi-page, so that you don't have to, so you can distribute that print pack to the shop, let's say. All right, so we're going to run that job. And this doesn't take very long because the other three drawings already had PDFs in the vault, and so it's just going to pull those PDFs out. So it's making a PDF of the top level, and now what we'll see is we've got our PDF of our top level assembly, and we can see there are actually 5 pages to this. The assembly starts with its parts list, and then the assembly drawing, and then the 3 subcomponent drawings that are necessary to go along with it. So I'm not necessarily duplicating any information in the vault. I'm just collating all of these necessary sheets via links. And this is a not uncommon workflow in terms of like managing project-specific information in Vault, where you may copy links of lots of different documents into a folder for a project, quote-unquote project. And I was able to create a PowerJobs job that used that information you may already be, collating in something like this to just automatically generate a PDF print pack. And of course, that job could even then email that out to somebody if necessary, right? And then the last one is one I've been asked about more than any others in terms of, besides just can we do PDFs, and that's watermarking. And this is crucial, especially if you want to share work in progress data with consumers, right? If they need to know what's going on with the documents before they're released. Now, the only kind of watermarking that Vault can do out of the box is with DWF files, and only when you're using the item behavior. That's the only type of watermarking that can be done in Vault. Well, most people don't use the item behavior, right? So what we can do with PowerJobs is we can make sure that when we change the state of a drawing, like from work in progress to for review, to make sure we got a job on the stack for that, we're going to run a PowerJobs job to make that PDF. But it's not only going to make the PDF, it's actually going to throw a watermark on there so that it's very clear what we're looking at. So when we look at this PDF, we can see for review is stamped across, so there's no question that you're not looking at release data, right? Now, eventually, we're going to need a PDF of this once it gets released, and we don't want the word released stamped all over the middle, maybe. So you can actually make decisions based on the property information in Vault. So if the drawing is in for review, or actually if the drawing is in any other state but released, you know, throw the state name in red across the middle of the drawing and make it mostly translucent, right, so that you know, we can still see what's going on behind it. But if the drawing is released, the resulting job will still put a watermark on there, but it's a lot less obtrusive. All right, so now we should have a new version of this, and now it does say released up here over in the corner, but it's not in anybody's way. So we can see this released, so it's the feel of the drawing is nice and clean. And, you know, the biggest benefit, I think, of this, especially with PDF, so let's go ahead and throw this back into a work in progress state. I want to generate another PDF where the latest version of this is in work in progress. If you're using the Vault Thin client or our QVP connection software, you could actually set up so that maybe your consumers can only see PDFs in the Vault. They can't see, you know, the underlying CAD data. And if you want to still be able to share information with people in a work in progress state, so they don't, say, start building or ordering off of something that you're currently working on, you know, they could take a look at that watermark drawing here, and right in their browser they can see here's the PDF, but it's very clear that this is currently a work in progress. So before you start building this or before you start ordering something against it, talk to engineering to see what's going on. Right. So the biggest issue I find with the thin client in Vault today is you either have to use DWF, which a lot of people don't like, or you know, you can use PDF, but it can only happen upon release. And if you need to share work in progress data with people, you're kind of stuck, right? And PowerJobs can get you out of that hole. All right, so those are the 4 scenarios that I came up with in terms of consumable file generation. There are lots of other things you can do. If you need to convert your CAD data into something for other people to use, if there's an API to allow that, and there is for Inventor and AutoCAD for sure, or even in some other third-party software, a .NET API, you can probably do it with PowerJobs. Now, if you need help with it, you know, we sell the software. We can sell you the software itself. We can give you help with installation and configuration. We can create turnkey jobs for you based on your requirements. And we can also give you training and enablement so you can not only maintain those custom jobs, but also if you want to create your own. So just leaving it now open for questions. We have had a few questions come in, and in case people aren't looking at the questions pane, I thought I would, you know, address those. One question, will this work with Vault Basic? The answer is no. It requires either Vault Workgroup or Vault Professional. That's because you have to have the idea of the job server and the job queue, and only Vault Workgroup and Vault Professional have those. Another question, are the PDFs revision controlled? If you revise the drawing, will you then have to have PDFs in Vault? You could absolutely set revision and such on the PDF. My examples just didn't do that, just to keep things simple, but you have complete control over that. So you could absolutely, you know, make the PDF match the revision level of the drawing. You could have the PDF take on property information of the drawing so that when someone's searching in Vault, the Vault properties can maintain that same information about the PDF, because it's hard to manage PDF custom properties, and Vault doesn't do a good job of indexing those. But with PowerJobs, you can put the properties onto the PDF as Vault user-defined properties. That way, the same information people search on to find the CAD models will find the PDF as well. Another question here. When PowerJobs releases a new PDF upon state transition, does it overwrite or create a new version of the previous PDF, or is this a completely new file with a new name always? Yeah, as Julia said in the answer, it's up to you. It will. My jobs all created a new version because Vault file records are based on the name, and so if the name is the same, it's going to create what PowerJobs does, the way I wrote the script at least, and again, this is up to you. It'll check that PDF out and update it with a new copy. You could also, how I was storing the PDFs in the output folder with revision letter, you could choose just to throw the PDF in Vault with the rev information attached in the file name. And in that case, it would become its own file record with no version history each time. So that's completely up to you. Yeah, so another question. Can you automate the creation of specific output folder structure based on drawing properties? Absolutely. A really cool thing about PowerVault, again, is the commandlet language that coolOrange created and that PowerJobs uses primarily. You have access to every property of the file object that's associated with the job, just like file.part number, file.description. And then you have in PowerShell itself, you have, and I can just call up, let's call up this print pack job, for example, just really quickly to see. You have the idea of flow control, like logic, like respond to certain things. You know, in my case, you know, I'm searching for a certain folder and getting the PDFs out of it. You know, there's just so much you can do, like with logic statements and property information. So another question, we place information on our prints for quantity, customer, and order number by hand. Would this give us the ability to place this information on the PDF so that we wouldn't have to manually add this after printing? If that information is handy, in terms of it's a Vault property, then yes. The one thing about PowerJobs is that you can't necessarily provide, I don't know of any way, because it's just reacting with a lifecycle state change in Vault. You'll know when I do this, when I go to change state and then set this to released, for example. Well, I mean, the only opportunity you have for any sort of user input is in this comments field. So I suppose in theory, you could do something like QTY 5 customer, whatever, but I wouldn't recommend this because you'd have to get it exactly right for a computer to interpret it. But if the information is somehow on a property, you could extract that information and put it on the PDF via the same watermarking thing that I did. Another thing we'll see in our webcast next week, Vault, Workgroup, and Pro actually do extract bill of materials information from inventor models when they come into Vault. So I could, in theory, see a way to pull off quantity, maybe. It would depend on the specifics. But again, any information that's a property of the file or something to do with the folder that it's in, any of that could be leveraged and used to collate the output. All right, so we have a lot of questions coming in, so I'll get to them as quickly as I can. Another question, can you add specific information to the watermark based on file properties? Absolutely. All I did with the watermark job that I have here, this is actually pulling off the state property. So if I wanted to put description or anything else, I could put that anywhere, and there's complete control over where this text goes. what its font is, what the size is. This uses something called PDF Sharp. It's an open source library.net for modifying PDF documents, and that's how it writes to it. My PDF collation job that makes the multi-page PDF, that also uses PDF Sharp to merge all of the PDFs together. Another question, we want to create PDF in an external folder when we release a part. We want to delete that PDF when we change lifecycle to work in progress. Can we use powerJobs to automate this? Yes. So what you would do is that when that file goes to work in progress, there would be a job specific to look for that PDF in the external folder and nuke it. And as long as the rules are followed and based on the model name, if the PDF of the drawing, if you can derive the name of the PDF, you could absolutely do that. And that's actually a really, really good idea. Making sure that if they go looking for a PDF, if they can't find it, they know that's being worked on, so they shouldn't do anything. That's a really good idea. So another question, Vault 2020 addresses some of the PDF creation tasks I presented. Is this considered for powerJobs version that will run on top of Vault 2020? That's a really good question. So technically we're under embargo from Autodesk until tomorrow when talking about 2020 features. That said, the what's new for Vault 2020 might already be out. There have been some enhanced capabilities for PDF generation out of the box. So it's a little more capable. That's all I can really say about that for now. So there was, powerJobs is already available for Vault 2020. powerJobs works in a fundamentally different way. The out-of-the-box behavior for Vault and its PDF creation is a certain job type, and powerJobs doesn't use that at all. If you want to use powerJobs to make a PDF, it is a completely unique job that does its own thing. So it's certainly true that the changes to PDF creation in Vault 2020 may eliminate the need for powerJobs for some people, but again, powerJobs goes beyond just creating PDFs, and it goes well beyond the stuff you can do even with the out-of-the-box jobs in 2020. Let's see. Another question, if understanding correctly, there's no GUI for PowerShell commandlet creation. The PowerShell command editor, I mean, in terms of a GUI, or if you're thinking maybe more like an IDE, there is an IDE to some degree. This is something I'm working on for next week's presentation. So this is what I use to write PowerShell scripts, and you can see there is like a list of all the commandlets over here, and I can filter that, say, to PowerVault. So these are all the PowerVault commandlets, and if you show the details of one of these, you can see all of the possible parameters for that, and use this to help you build the right syntax for a command. What's interesting about this specific command, this actually pulls an inventor assembly. It looks in the Vault for an inventor assembly, and it pulls out its complete multi-level BOM and throws it into a table. So this is something I'm going to be showing next week. But just like that, I got the BOM of an inventor model out of Vault. But yeah, the IDE would be the Windows PowerShell. Windows PowerShell ISE is what I use. Another question, can you have it take the old Rev PDF and have it moved into a different folder once the new PDF is released? Absolutely. Yeah, PowerShell gives you complete access to the file system, and so any sort of maneuvering or moving around of things you need to do, you can absolutely do that too. One last question I see here, the rough cost for one license of PowerJobs. It's about $1,100 per job processor per year. As I said, in most cases, most environments could probably get away with just one job processor. Two, maybe if you've got a huge workload, but if you're doing so much automation, you need 2 job processors, the cost of powerJobs is going to be a drop in the bucket compared to what you're saving. Let's see. Back here and see if we missed any questions. Can you make a 3D PDF? That's a really, really good question. The short answer is I don't know. If there is, I don't know the, there is a commandlet for PowerJobs for export, basically to export a file. I don't know if it's been updated yet to incorporate 3D PDF. The short answer is I don't know, but if the Vault, or if the Inventor API, I should say, allows for creation of a 3D PDF, then yes, I'm sure PowerJobs could also make a 3D PDF. But that is really going to depend on whether the Inventor API allows that, and I can't say that for sure. I haven't looked at that part of the Inventor API. There may not be an easy PowerShell commandlet to export that 3D PDF, but worst case, you could call up the Inventor API, talk to Inventor, and make the 3D PDF if the Inventor API allows that. All right, so I think we've addressed all of the questions. If any answers I provided, if you have more questions, please go ahead and ask them. Otherwise, if you're interested in PowerJobs or want to know more specifically, can it meet a need that you have, you can always get in touch with your Hagerman account manager and we can set up a call to discuss. But yeah, I think that is it for the questions. So just a reminder, in addition to the PowerJobs and coolOrange stuff, we also offer document management solutions, primarily Vault, but other solutions as well. We also offer simulation services, and CAD services, et cetera. So, any Autodesk related needs you might have, just get in touch with your Hagerman account manager or go to hagerman.com for more information. And I think with that, we'll wrap it up.
Okay, thanks, Forrest, and thank you everyone for attending. Once again, if you could take a few moments to fill out the short survey, we would appreciate it. We'll just pop up as we close down today. Again, thanks for attending and have a great day, everybody.